Hi, my name is Kennedy Slavicek, and I'm a sophomore here at Ball State majoring in fashion merchandising. And just to give you a little background about my family history, most of the family history that we talk about is on my dad's side of the family. And I am only a third generation US born citizen. So my parents and my grandparents were born in the US, but my great grandparents and on are from Czechoslovakia, and most of my family still lives there. So this is my artifact, and it is my great-grandmother's passport to get into the U.S. And there's a lot of pages here, so I'm not going to show them all to you, but there's a little... And I'm going to be telling the story of how she got into the U.S. because it's a lot more interesting than how my great-grandfather got here. So my grandma's name, or great-grandma's name, was Anna Joskova, and she was only 17 years old when she left her home of Czechoslovakia to live with her brother in Chicago. Her first plan was to take the train to Amsterdam in May 1915, and from there take a boat to Ellis Island, and then have her brother claim her there. But she was actually scheduled to take the Lusitania, but as you know, it sank on its way back from New York City. Because of the sinking, her trip was rescheduled for December, so she went back to Czechoslovakia and did the same thing over again, and she finally landed safely December 6th, 1915 on Ellis Island. Her brother was supposed to pick her up there, but unfortunately he was stuck in Chicago due to a snowstorm. And for those of you who don't know what Ellis Island is, it's a small little island off of New York City that immigrants would come in and have people claim them there, and they would go into the U.S. safely, especially during that World War I time. So since they were having so many immigrants wanting to come into the U.S., they'd keep them on there for maybe 3 days tops, and then they would kick them off and send them back to where they came from if nobody was there to claim them. But fortunately for my great-grandmother, she was fluent in 4 languages. She could speak English, French, Dutch, and Czech, so she was able to stay and translate for the incoming immigrants. And she even got to stay in the back room of the employee headquarters instead of, the cabins that they stayed in before. So she stayed for a little over 2 weeks, and her brother finally came from Chicago and claimed her there. She moved back to Chicago, and that's where she met my great-grandfather. So this is just a copy of the passport. The original copy is still on display at my grandparents' house, and they plan on giving it to my dad when they pass on, and then he plans on giving it to me, and so on and so forth. Growing up, my parents always made me very aware of my Czech heritage, so this passport always reminds me of where my family gets a lot of its substance, recipes, religious beliefs. A lot of it is from Czech. And the fact that she was only 17 years old and was fluent in multiple languages and was highly educated, and she traveled across the world by herself, I think reflects greatly on my family and I, and just her determination. So the passport is always a reminder of her courage and dedication to wanting to move into the U.S. And the passport and the story of my great-grandma have always meant a lot to me. I grew up hearing the story over and over again. Whenever there was a show and tell or I had to do a project in high school, I'd always pick Ellis Island and tell the story of my great-grandmother. Whenever I say my last name and people always ask me where the country of origin is, and I tell them Czechoslovakia, they're always really interested and eager to hear more about it because it's not a country that you usually hear. And so I always resort to telling the story of my great-grandmother. And as for the passport, I already obviously have this copy, but my dad plans on giving me the original copy eventually because I do have an older brother. But since when I get married I'll be changing my last name, a lot of people won't be asking me, what country I came from. So I think it's really important for my family and my children and grandchildren to know where I came from and how much the Czech heritage has meant to me and has shaped me into the person that I am today.